Hello and welcome to another episode of Design Divas. I'm Pavitra Sriprakash with Sheila Sriprakash here at Shilpa Architects, Planners and Designers in Chennai. And today we wanted to talk about something that's quite relevant, which is climate and designing for climate in Chennai and in the Indian subcontinent in general. So wanted to kind of like go back to a couple of decades ago, ma'am, and see what were your usual go-to design tools when you went about designing for the kind of climatic conditions that we have here.
Yeah, in fact, it's the weather. We are now into talking about the summer coming in, and with the summer that comes in the kind of sweat, and how uncomfortable you feel, how tired you feel. So, earlier those days, the planning was always based on the breeze.
Right.
And in Chennai, you had this positive thing about the sea breeze setting in.
Right, the daily breeze.
The daily sea breeze that comes in from the sea into the land, which brings in a certain amount of coolth. So, I think almost all designs, Pavitra, were designed in a way that it opened out to let the sea breeze in. So, and of course, we did have transition spaces like verandas, balconies, where people sit.
Right.
And it's between a transition between the actual interior and the exterior. So you have these spaces which catch the wind,
right,
and which catch the breeze and lets it into the into the house. But today we find that air conditioning is really, the key.
Right.
So everybody opts for air conditioning.
Right. I really think there must have been a mind shift in the way you design, depending on whether the building looked at optimal natural ventilation versus now, of course, with the increase, as you must have seen, the increase in air conditioning, right, in the projects and how it evolved from those pokey little window ACs that we all used to have in the 80s. To the high wall split, to cassettes, to now people wanting to do central systems, even for smaller projects, even for homes. So how have you seen the whole design mentality shift? Like what have been 2 or 3 big things that have happened that are very different for a naturally ventilated building design versus an artificially ventilated one?
Brick, as you know, is a wonderful material which is made out of earth, clay. And therefore it has a certain tendency to retain the coolth in it, and therefore the difference between the indoor temperature and the outdoor temperature is kind of this takes the buffer,
right,
and it itself is the transition. And you also had these verandas and balconies to have a further transition,
another buffer.
So the heat was not getting directly onto the living wall.
Right, and now I think the emphasis is on the envelope and the performance of the envelope. So we're always looking at how a wall has a certain U value, a certain level of insulation, or if it's in the case of glass, then what kind of like shading or performance it has.
Right, you're right. And even if you look at those days, we had windows, and windows were all in wood.
Right.
And then you could never get the light in. That's why these old houses are all...
The shutters were in wood, right? Like we never had the concept of glass at all.
So what happened was it was dark inside. And then when the glass came as a beautiful transparent material where you could see the outside, glass started being. And also wood became expensive and scarce.
Right,
so
and
we were not able to use
wood
that.
in India has always had its little problems with being a very sustainable material, just because the way our forestries are managed. So to get certified wood, to have to import it also sounds a little ridiculous, but that's what we're having to do.
So all these are issues where the heat load within the building goes up.
Right.
And that becomes very difficult to handle in summer. And also the terraces are all flat and they're not tiled anymore.
Right.
So you have RCC terraces with thin coatings, and so the heat comes in from the so it becomes a heat sink.
Right.
The
Talk
building.
a little bit about this tiled roof, ma'am, since you did bring it up, about how the tiled roof was helping with thermal comfort.
See, I would go one step further, where
Yeah.
you had a flat roof, but you had what is called the Madras terrace roof,
Which is what was,
which is
very
a
prevalent
beautiful
over here.
roof, which used country bricks placed diagonally on the flat arch concept. So they were placed on rafters, and so it was thermally very efficient, and the temperatures inside the building
The same advantage that brick had in the wall, it's going to now have on the roof, right?
have on the roof. So the entire envelope was brick.
Right.
So on all sides, vertically and horizontally, was brick. So that was ideal. And then you had, of course, you had these sloped roofs wherever they were used, and where sloped roofs were used, it was the Mangalore tile with an under tile. So there was a small little insulation gap,
And there was some air there
air
for
coming
that
in there.
movement.
And naturally, the buildings were much higher. The heights of the building, the
Right.
rooms were higher. So when you have higher heights, as you know, hot air has a tendency to go
rise.
up, and then
Correct.
if you have a little ventilator at the top, then it has place to escape, and then when it has this place to escape, it creates a
Creates a cooler draft. at
cooler
the lower
draft,
end,
and the breeze from the lower levels come in, and when the sea breeze sets in, it's really beautiful.
And I think that's what's so lovely about our history and the way in which buildings have evolved over here. And in many ways, you've sort of seen the shift happen. You've seen this shift happen from materials of construction and ways in which the built environment was treated back then to what's happening now. And now you find that designing for air conditioning requires a completely different sort of mind game.
Absolutely.
And so what do you think are I guess Shilpa's strength, which is obviously derived from your strengths, and learnings of how we start a design here and what that process means for us?
See, now the priorities have changed. Earlier all our the master bedrooms used to be in the southeast.
Right,
And,
because that's where the breeze came in.
yeah, the breeze came in from the southeast. But now we are putting the kitchen in the southeast, because Vastu seems to be such a big thing in our lives. So so what happens is that breeze takes a second place.
But also, to argue that point, master bedrooms are no longer naturally ventilated.
Not at all.
I mean, everyone cannot imagine a non-air conditioned master bedroom, but a non-air conditioned kitchen still does tend
Yes.
to exist.
So maybe it's a good thing that the
Yeah.
kitchens are in the southeast. But what happens is you don't even open windows.
This is true, yeah.
So when you don't open windows, the reason is that pollution, dust. So why open windows? So then what happens to the carbon dioxide buildup within the room?
Right. No, I think also it's a larger problem. I mean, the cities are all facing issues with air quality. Our air quality is suffering because of the number of trees that are getting cut. It's all rolled into one. And I think previously, at least, there was a sense of, especially the southern parts of the city, where we used to have a lot of trees, a huge tree cover. It felt fresh.
Absolutely.
But that's also slowly changing.
But you do understand that when you're outside, you stand under a tree, you immediately see that there is a temperature difference.
Drop, of course,
Temperature drop, and you feel more comfortable with even if you see the leaves shaking, you feel that the breeze is on you. So this is something that is happening with change of materials, change of technology, and as you said, with the aluminium formwork shuttering,
Right.
they're going in for thinner and thinner walls.
Right.
And these thinner walls are dense concrete, and therefore the heat load inside the building goes up, and when that happens, air conditioning becomes a must. So I think the HVAC industry faces a big challenge in being innovative enough to see how to make
Their systems that
their
much more,
systems, yeah.
I guess energy friendly.
And then they use the right refrigerant, which is not a deterrent to the atmosphere, and also to see that, you know, less energy is consumed. So how can we use solar to air condition our spaces? I mean, that
Right.
is something which I think we should focus on, because then the hotter it gets, the cooler we get.
Yeah, that would be, in an ideal world, that would feel
Yeah.
really nice. So nowadays, as a sustainable practice, I think a lot of our buildings personally go through a simulation once they are designed. And the first principles of design obviously include placements, whether
Orientation.
they are about orientation to geography or orientation to sentiment and vastu. We kind of try to balance the two. And once that comes out, we do run it past a certain, you know, computer process to understand and evaluate how we're doing for, you know, there's this word that we use, the degree discomfort hours, to understand occupancy comfort and, you know, the comfort that occupants face in a place. So while we try to balance daylight, we're also trying to balance the thermal efficiency. So what have you felt while going through this process of simulation? How have you felt like, you know, that technology has aided us in moving
It's
along?
fascinating. It's
Yeah?
fascinating. In fact, I think we should only look at these as pluses in our lives, and
Yes,
then
absolutely.
we are able to analyze every corner. We are able to identify hot pockets, and, you know, we can place things right. I mean, I think this technology is wonderful. Sensors, basic idea of having sensing, you know, heat and sensing light is phenomenal, and it
Right.
gives you a lot. Your window placements can get designed accordingly.
The window sizing,
Sizing can be according.
the ratio of the windows to the walls.
The sunshade depths can be decided, like we did in our office.
Right.
We kind of simulated the whole thing, and the width of the sunshade has been designed according to the, you know, to see that the sun's heat does not fall on the glass directly.
Right, and I think this always helps in all these decision makings.
These
I
are
think
only
as
challenges.
Right, no, as a designer and an architect, you have 100 decisions or maybe more, thousands of decisions to make, right from what brick to use, to what glass to use, to what size of members to use, to like everything which is a design decision. And I think it just helps us make these in a more meaningful and understood way in which we are making it an informed decision.
Absolutely. And I think that the more we research into materials, you know, these composite materials which are coming, which are energy efficient, aesthetic, environmentally friendly,
Right.
responsive to the resource scarcity. So, you know, the more we get materials like that, and the more we are in a position to use that with this data that is available, the analytics that is available, I think we should be in a position to kind of counter this you
Right.
know, challenge or threat.
So yes, today we spoke about, you know, designing for the heat and for the climatic conditions that we are under. And every time when summer comes around, we are reinforced with why this process becomes important for us here at Shilpa Architects. And it's a wrap for today's Design Divas conversation on building for the climate effects of Chennai and the heat that we're expecting during this summer holiday. So please do like, share and subscribe for more such content, and look forward to seeing you again the next time. Thank you.